Hello, listeners. Welcome to Marie Lives the Horror. This is episode 13 of the series of True Paranormal Ghost Stories. In this episode, I bring you 6 terrifying tales of true paranormal encounters. So without further ado, step into my horror chamber as we live the horror together. Number 1. The Painting. When I was 5 years old, my family and I moved into a new house. My dad wanted to buy some paintings to decorate our new home. There was one painting he bought at an antique shop that hung just over the stairs. It was of a girl with dark curls dressed in linen robes. She was standing against what appeared to be a metal door, holding a spear in both hands behind her back. Her brow was low and heavy, and her feet bare, and her posture was stiff. Immediately, I sensed a weird air about this painting. About a month after the painting was hung above the stairs, I saw something cross her face like a shadow. Her normally expressionless visage was now smirking. An evil-looking half-grin appeared across her lips, and maybe it was just me, but I swore I saw her hands tighten on the spear behind her back. Frightened, I ran as quickly as I could up the stairs into my bedroom, where I hid under the covers for almost an hour. A little while later, I peeked out from behind my bedroom door at the painting at the end of the hall, making sure she was still smiling. This time, I saw her dark eyes meet mine. I yelped and slammed the door shut and didn't come out for the rest of the day. That night, I dreamt about her. The dream was so vivid and real that I remember it till this day. In my dream, I saw the painting, but this time, she was gone. All that was visible beyond the frame was the bronze-colored door that was behind her. I could distinctly smell the acrid scent of paint thinner, though I had no idea what the smell was at the time, only that it was a sour, acidic kind of scent. I looked all around for my parents, my grandparents, anybody at all. I ran into my grandparents' room, where my brother's crib was, and no one was there. I couldn't find my parents either. I was alone. When I left my parents' room, there she was, standing in front of my bedroom door, spear pointed in front of her. Her dark face twisted into an expression of rage. When she turned toward me, as she ran at full speed down the hall, her spear flew through the air and lodged itself into the wooden door of my parents' bedroom. Terrified, I ducked underneath her legs and ran as fast as I could outside, and through my terror, I heard her screaming something. Then I woke up. The next morning after my nightmare, I decided I'd tell my dad that I didn't like that painting. Unfortunately, he didn't take me seriously. My dad had an odd fascination with the girl in the painting. My mom even admitted later that she did not like her either, that she had an evil air about her. But no matter how much she tried to convince him to get rid of it, he refused. My dad would make comments like, "She's just beautiful, isn't she?" And no matter where we moved, he always took her with him. For years after, he'd call me crazy for not seeing her beauty, or paranoid for thinking a painting was evil, but I held fast to my belief. The last time I saw her was in my parents' attic. She was much smaller than I remembered, her expression as dark as ever, but her face looked different than before. She now wears a poker face, her eyes unreadable, and her mouth is in a tight, straight line. The evil air about her has diminished, but is still very much there. I turned her painting around so she'd lie face down as I left the attic. Number 2. Something whispering my name. So this story happened about 3 or 4 years ago when I was still in high school. I am a girl and I was probably around 17 maybe. This one afternoon my parents left to visit my grandparents and my sister was at her rugby practice, so I was left home alone. That wasn't a problem for me. I got used to being home alone since both my parents worked late and my sister was always out doing something. This particular afternoon, I was on my computer in my room, and I don't remember what exactly I was doing, but I was probably watching a movie or some YouTube video because I had my headphones on. I had been alone for about an hour up to this point. I'm not sure how important it is to know, but my room's on the first floor. When you climb the stairs, you can literally step from the last step into my room to the right, and my computer desk is exactly opposite to the door. I usually leave my door open wide with a doorstop, and this day was no different. As I sat there with my back to the door and my headphones on, I felt as if someone was behind me. At first, I shrugged the feeling off because it happened to me quite often in the house, and I never really paid much attention to it. I simply convinced myself it was just my brain messing with me. Then the feeling got somehow more intense, so I took off my headphones and turned around, but nobody was there. As expected, I couldn't hear anything or anyone. Now, my sister would prank me sometimes by standing in the doorway really quietly, just watching me and waiting for me to see her and scare the living hell out of me. She found it hilarious, and I thought it might be her, even though I knew she wouldn't be home for another couple of hours. This feeling started to bother me, as I feared someone might have entered the house, since I didn't really know if my parents had locked the front door or not. I got up from my seat and checked the stairs, where I thought my sister could be hiding from me, but there was no one there, though this unexplainable feeling of discomfort lingered in the hallway. I then just stopped and listened to any noise, but I heard nothing. I went to check the house, and sure enough, the doors were locked. All the windows were closed, and I really was alone. I went back to my room and sat down again. After some time, the feeling came back and I chose to ignore it, though I did put my headphones away. Then, this thing that I still to this day cannot explain happened. I felt chills go up my back and a warm breath on the left side of my neck. I sat there still, afraid to move an inch, and in my head, I was somehow still convincing myself it was my sister. After a second or two, I heard my name whispered into my ear. I turned my head slowly, just enough so that from the corner of my eye, I could see that nobody was there. I then whipped my head around so fast my neck hurt, and upon seeing that indeed no one was there, in an instinct, I pushed myself along the chair away from the desk and the door. I did this so hard that I fell on the floor and hurt my elbow. I then took my phone and ran into the bathroom, where I stayed for around 30 minutes before my parents finally got back. I haven't told them the story, but I did mention it to my sister, who thought I was hallucinating or something. I honestly am not sure whether I was hallucinating or there was something actually there with me that day. I kind of don't really want to find out. Number 3. Weird night at my dad's house in the woods. Ever since I was little, I have always been super scared of paranormal experiences, as I have always believed that they happened and they are real. I have never had one in real life besides having seen scary figures while having sleep paralysis. My dad's house is in the middle of the woods and was built in 2007. This house has had a lot of bad things take place in it, like my parents fighting constantly, and my dad raging and being abusive towards my mom. They got divorced in 2016 while I was in my sophomore year of high school, and when my mom moved out, I enjoyed staying with her in her new home. All of my bad dreams take place in my dad's house, and everyone seems to be afraid of it when they come over. It's so weird. It's a very big 3-story house with an alarm system and an unfinished basement. The cleaning lady there told me once that when she was cleaning the house, the alarm system detected movement in the basement. Very creepy. One night about 3 months ago, I'm 19 and in my second year of college. I came to my dad's house around 9 p.m. and my dad and my stepmom were not home yet. I came inside and made myself dinner and sat with my 2 small dogs on the couch and waited for them to get home. I eventually went upstairs to my room and took my dogs with me and sat on my bed and played my guitar. My dogs both fell asleep on my bed, and I just sat there playing for a bit when I heard something downstairs. I immediately thought my dad was home, and I got up and went to the top of the stairs and just heard silence. I was like, what the fuck? I called my dad, and he said they were still at dinner and hadn't left yet. So I was a little weirded out, but just after like 10 minutes, I went back to just sitting on my bed and forgot about it. Well, about 5 to 10 minutes after that, I heard 3 noises that sounded like objects falling off a table or something. I was not about to go see what happened because I'm a big wuss, and I took my dogs and locked myself in the bathroom because I thought someone was in the house. I called my dad and told him to come home because I was scared, and they left the restaurant to come home. My dad also has security cameras, so he checked the cameras for me and saw nothing. After hiding in the bathroom for 30 minutes or so, he finally got home, and I came downstairs a little scared but relieved he was home, and we looked all over to see if anything had fallen down, and we found nothing. It could have just been the ice maker, but it truly sounded like a bottle falling down. Well, I thought this was the end of it, and I really could have forgotten about this scary event. But I went to sleep that night around 11 p.m. I usually do not sleep this early, but I had to work at 6 a.m. that morning and I was worn out. I fell asleep with both my dogs on the bed with me, and around 1 a.m. I woke up suddenly to a warm, harsh pressure on my foot, and it felt as it was being lifted up off my bed. My eyes were wide open, but my face was sort of covered in blankets, and I kind of just stayed there under the blankets and yanked my feet. The feeling went away, and my dog jumped off the bed after I yanked my feet and started pacing around my room. I had the worst, most fearful feeling, and I truly felt like a presence was in there with me. It is just something I have never felt before. I just started praying, and I called my dad on my phone, asking him to come upstairs and lay with me. I was too scared to move. I then heard a really strange noise. It was almost like a low, moaning noise. I really don't know how to describe it. It could have been just me in my sleep, making stuff up, or my dog, but it was just all too perfect for the moment. I really am not sure what to think of this. My dad came in my room, and I told him what happened. My dad and I don't have a close relationship anymore because of what has happened in the past, but he laid with me in bed and slept with me for a few hours before leaving, which was really nice and was what I needed. I can't say I really slept much that night, and I have not slept at his house since, and I probably never will again. But this was the first and only time I have had something like this happen, and I conclude that this is the house and the weird ties I have to it with bad memories. I think some bad juju is flowing through there. Please let me know any thoughts on this, if any. Thanks for reading this as well. I know it was long, so if you made it this far, I appreciate it so much. Number 4. Something mimicked my youngest child's voice. Long post warning. I live with my husband and our 4 kids. My youngest is 6, and my oldest is about to turn 11. And all but the second youngest are girls. The way our house is set up is all the kids' bedrooms and their bathroom is also upstairs. It is set up in a sort of semicircle, with the 2 youngest sharing a room on the very left, next to the stairs, and the bathroom on the very right, next to the stairs, and the other two room entrances are across the small landing. Right next to the lower landing down the stairs is the entrance to the hallway that leads to my bedroom and bathroom on the first floor. Every night, I go clockwise, room to room, tucking my kids in, and after I've said goodnight to the last one, I start down the stairs and say one more time to all of them, "Good night, I love you all, sweet dreams." And they say it back to me, and then I tell them to be quiet and go to sleep. The night this happened, my son was at work with my husband. He's a truck driver. Because they had a week off school just before all the social distancing started, so my youngest was in their room by herself. I tucked her in and then her sisters, and was making my way downstairs and said what I usually do, and I only heard the two oldest answer sort of quietly. So I playfully yelled at this time to get them to answer louder, and I didn't hear the other two, but I heard my youngest clear as a bell from her dark room. She sleeps in a lower bunk, where the foot faces the door and has drawers in it, so I had no view of her. But she's yelling it loudly back to me. I shrug it a bit and think, close enough, and make my way downstairs, and immediately turn to go down the hallway to use my bathroom. My bathroom door is closed, which I thought was odd, since it's always left open unless someone is in there, and I put my hand on it to open it, just as I hear my toilet flush. I about shit myself, because there should not be anyone else in my house right now, and I walk in to see my youngest pulling up her pajamas back up. My heart is still pounding at this point, and I'm extremely confused because I literally just heard her in her bedroom. But trying not to jump to any conclusions and stay calmish, I figure maybe my middle daughter is the one that I heard. So I yell up the stairs, "Good night, I love you, sweet dreams." And my youngest, who followed me to the bottom of the stairs, yells it back from right beside me. I don't hear any response from upstairs. I yell up asking my middle if she's the one who yelled it back to me the second time, and she said no. I'm getting creeped out because my youngest had obviously come downstairs after I tucked her in, so it couldn't have been her who I heard. I go upstairs, position myself so that I could see my older girls, and start drilling them, asking which one of them answered me the second time. They both insisted neither of them had, because they'd answered the first time. I asked my youngest if she'd answered me the second time, wondering if maybe I just heard her voice from the wrong place somehow, and she said she had only answered the one time I yelled from downstairs, and she was next to me. So I asked the older two if they'd heard what sounded like their little sister answer me that second time, and they both said yes, they heard it. So I told them to get their bed stuff, because we're camping downstairs in the living room together. I got them all set up and was on the phone with my husband, freaking out and telling him what happened. And I walk upstairs to take a look around, and my cat follows me. She walks directly into that still dark room, looks over at their closet. Now, There's a history of creepy things happening with the closet in that room since we moved in. My cat looks at the bed where my youngest sleeps and then walks to the closet door and starts scratching on it. She's never done this before, ever. The only time I've ever witnessed her scratching on a door is if someone doesn't realize she's in a room and shuts her inside, and she finally feels like leaving but can't. She's never scratched to get in anywhere. So that's one of the strongest experiences with the paranormal, and definitely my most recent. I cleansed and everything, and nothing creepy has happened since. The kids all sleep in their own beds still, though sometimes they are wanting to keep the lights on. Number 5. My haunted apartment. This isn't a work of fiction intended to scare you. It is my account of a ghost that lived in my apartment. I have only told a few people this, and it is from 20 years ago when I was in college. I lived in student housing with 4 roommates in our pod. It was 5 bedrooms and shared kitchen and bathroom for those 5 bedrooms. The bedrooms were all in a row on one side of a long hallway. My room was on the opposite end of the front door, and the kitchen was at the far end of the hall, and the bathrooms were opposite the bedrooms. On multiple occasions when leaving my room, late at night, before I could turn my head out of the corner of my eye, there was a nurse standing at the far end of the hall, facing me. Now, there is a nursing program at this college, so a nurse in student housing was a normal occurrence. This nurse, however, was dressed in a manner more appropriate to the 1940s or 50s. Definitely not 2000 scrubs that the current students wore. Now, more than a sight out of the corner of my eye, I would also feel a presence strong enough that I knew someone was there. The best similar feeling I can think of is when there's someone sitting directly behind you in a theater or on public transit. You can't see them, but you can feel their presence, and you know they are there. The second I turned my head, the feeling disappeared and there was no nurse. There was nobody at all. Just 4 locked bedrooms and empty kitchen and bathrooms. Yes, I checked every room. Since it wasn't particularly exciting or scary, I dismissed it. I assumed it was because I was tired and it was late at night. But I repeatedly saw the nurse on at least a monthly basis. 1 month, I saw her every week. Nothing I could do to see her better. If I resisted turning my head, the feeling would remain until I looked her way. That's all that ever happened. I never told anyone about the nurse because at this point, it was a pretty boring story. Plus, I didn't exactly believe in ghosts, so what was I actually going to tell them? That my mind played a trick on me when I was tired? That's not exactly news. During one of our parties, a classmate of mine asked who the nurse was. My roommates dismissed it because we had all been drinking. I asked him what he saw, and he said she was dressed in an older time nursewear, and she disappeared fast. I told him there was no nurse here, and he said he knew someone was there, but since there was nowhere for the nurse to hide, he kind of let it go. 2 years later, a friend from my hometown came to visit. Halfway through her visit, she asked why I didn't tell her about the nurse who lived there. I said, because there is no nurse who lived here. She got a confused look on her face and said, then who's wearing the costume? I told her, I don't know. To be very clear, I never told either friend I sometimes saw a nurse ghost in my apartment, and they don't know each other, so they couldn't have shared the story with each other. I don't know what was actually going on in that apartment, but looking back on it now, I find it fun that it was actually a ghost. Number 6. Oil Field True Story. Haunted Ship. Here's some background. I work in the offshore oil and gas industry, oil field for short, and the work that my crew and I do often has us working with our equipment set up on board ships called offshore supply vessels / boats that are owned by another company. Also, I live and work in Asia. We normally have a crew of 15 to 20 packs on the job site at any given time, and we don't have specific shifts like day or night. We just work whenever the requirement arises or the client requests day or night. In most cases, this means we'll be working 24 to 36 hours straight. Here's the story. This one time, the client engaged our company to charter a supply boat and set up our equipment on board to do a job at an offshore drilling rig. Our equipment is huge, massive diesel-driven units which get very loud when running. This will be important later. And pretty much occupied the whole deck of the boat. Things started up normally. We set up the equipment, which took a week's hard work, sailed out to port, got to the drilling rig on schedule. There was some other operational stuff going on, so we waited on standby near the rig for a couple of weeks, floating about and killing time. This is where the quote-unquote fun starts. I mentioned earlier, we had about 15 guys on my crew, and there were another 20 guys who made up the boat's crew, plus the boat isn't that huge, so there's always another human being probably within shouting distance. It started the night we got on location. At breakfast, a couple of my guys were sitting all zombified and exhausted. They said they had had a bad bout of sleep paralysis. Now, this can happen occasionally, especially, or should I say, as a result of really hard physical exertion for prolonged periods. So the moment you collapse and have a good deep rest, your body can, in fact, experience what seems to be sleep paralysis. No biggie. Since we just spent a whole week, day and night, rigging up our heavy equipment and piping, we shrugged it off, went back to sitting around shooting the breeze. After all, we had a couple of weeks of nothing to do on standby, so with plenty of rest, it wouldn't happen again. We were wrong. The next night, a few other guys got it. Then the following night, A few other guys experienced it too. And every single night, random guys experienced it. There was no pattern. There was no exception. Eventually, everyone had experienced it. Some reported being able to open their eyes and seeing a dark figure pressing down on them in their bunk beds. A couple more religious ones tried reciting prayers during the episodes, only to have the choking, pressing feeling intensify. Morale was taking a beating. Isolated cases in the past we could laugh off, since there was a reasonable explanation and correlation to the physical work we did. This time, something was very wrong. The whole crew was getting it, and we literally had zero physical work at all. Still, we gave each other what moral support we could to get through the days and nights. And in the mornings, we knew the tired, drawn expressions, the sunken eyes, the dark circles. We knew who it had came for the previous night. That's not all. If you've worked offshore, you'll know sometimes standby is the hardest because you quickly run out of ideas to pass the time. So we got busy, found things to do, started running through the preventive maintenance and startup checks on our equipment, running the units, so that the moment we got the green light from the client, we would be ready to go at full throttle. It came at us there too. Strange sounds on deck, amongst the equipment. I was on deck one evening after dinner with 5 other guys, working on one of the diesel engines. Suddenly, a huge metallic boom rang out from the aft deck. It sounded like someone took a 10-pound sledgehammer and slammed it into one of the metal bulkheads. I got up to go aft to check it out, thinking it might have been a loose lube oil or one of the units not being shimmed properly. The supervisor grabbed my arm and said, "Not now. Tomorrow in daylight." I was about to protest, but seeing the look in his eyes, I backed down. In the morning, me and the other guys went to check the aft deck and found nothing. Equipment skids were shimmed tight, everything secured tight as it should be. And the previous night, there was nobody at the aft deck area. But every night from then on, the same boom, the same place without fail. Another thing, the vessel's crew refused flat out to say anything when asked about these things. Sure, they were friendly and great guys to work with, but when this topic came up, they simply clammed up tight. And weirdly enough, they also absolutely refused to ever come out on deck after nightfall. Daytime was fine. They will help with any request at all. But after dark, nope. Want a spare part from the deck store during the day? Fill out forms? Wait outside while the bosun goes gets it for you? Nobody goes inside my store. But after dark, it's a free-for-all. The deck crew, not even the fussy bosun, will come out on deck. Go ahead and take what you need yourselves. Just fill in the logbook. The final straw came once it was time to finally get to work. For context, we had an electrician who is a white American, Jack. Awesome guy. Very chill. Skeptical when it came to weird happenings. He was the one guy on the crew who could laugh off everything that happened and said we were imagining things. So in a way, he helped us keep our sanity, which is important for later. The job finally starts. The big diesel units are running at full throttle. Listen to the 3000 HP choir sing. Everyone is giving it their all, and we're done in about 24 straight hours. The client is happy. Time to sail home. The crew shuts down the equipment, pats each other on the back, and heads to the locker room. It's about 2 a.m. at this point. Wait, where's Jack? Jack was curled up in a ball in the locker room, in a tiny gap between the lockers and the wall. A mound of cigarette butts on the floor at his feet. Rocking back and forth, chain smoking furiously. He does not chain smoke. He is pale, shaking, eyes wild, and muttering over and over again. What the fuck, man? What the fuck did I just see? What the fuck was that thing? We heard what happened from our mechanic. He was with Jack at the aft deck near the railing when they both saw a white, man-sized bundle fall from the drilling rig. The jack-up rig is a 30-meter drop from the rig floor to sea level and into the sea with a loud, audible splash. Hang on. These guys are standing right behind the diesel engines, 140 decibels loud, with earmuffs on, and they heard a splash? Jack was really excited, thinking it might be a man overboard, wanting to throw him a life ring and jump in to save him, when the mechanic grabbed Jack, pulled him back from where he was about to climb over the railing, and dragged him backwards. Jack started to argue when they saw something moving in the water. For context, it's dark, midnight. We're out in the open sea. The sea is choppy. If anyone fell into the sea in these conditions, good luck to you. This thing they saw, it was submerged and coming towards the boat, making a V wave as it came. Jad continued arguing as if in a trance that it was a man overboard. He needed to rescue the person, started climbing the rail again. Mechanic slaps him and says, "Jack, whatever that is, it's not human. We're fucking going now." Next thing we know, we found Jack huddled in the locker room out of his damn mind. Couldn't even muster a coherent sentence. Took him a couple of days to regain his composure after that incident. Thankfully, the journey back to port was short, 20 hours sailing time. We were all too motivated to disassemble all the equipment soon, as we reached the shore and get the hell off that boat in record time. Here's one more experience that happened. So one of the nights, about 2 nights before we started the job for the client, I was out with a few guys preparing some chemicals for the job. To do this, we used a little air-driven diaphragm pump fed by an air compressor located at, you guessed it, the aft deck. It makes a chuck, chuck, chuck sound. Chuck, 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 shh. Our supervisor states, "Compressor must have tripped or run out of fuel. Minion 1, go check it." Minion 1 yells out, "Roger that." Goes to where the compressor is, and everyone continues doing other stuff. About 2 minutes later, cue Minion 1. He comes running, pale, out of breath, saying, "No air, no air, no air, no air." My supervisor then says, "What is going on?" Minion 1 says, "No air, no air, no air." Kid you not, he really said it this way, but in our local dialect, not English. My supervisor facepalms himself. Ugh. FFS Minion 2. Go check it out. This is the senior guy. About 2 minutes later, Minion 2 comes back, pale as a ghost. Boss, you'd better see for yourself." Everyone then shares a sideways glance. Then we all get up and go to the aft deck. Lo and behold, the mighty little compressor is shut down, key in the off position, side vent flaps closed, and excess pressure bled off. Supervisor says, "Yeah, damn funny. You shut it down and closed it up perfectly. So you want us to clock out early for the night?" Minion 2 says, "No, boss. It was like this. I didn't touch nothing." Minion 1 is nodding furiously, still incoherent. Then I say, "So which joker's dumb enough to shut the unit down while we're still using it?" And then the realization dawns upon us. The 6 of us were together the whole time. Nobody else was out on deck. They had to go past our work area to go aft. And then these 2 normally steady, solid guys are spooked as hell. I dare say, even with the humid heat, thick coveralls on, all of us got the shivers and goosebumps. We calmly restarted the compressor again and silently trooped back to get our work wrapped up in record time, then back to the relative questionable safety of our bunks. Thank you for sticking with me if you managed to read all this way. It's a long, long story, but it was one of the scariest and weirdest experiences I've had in my whole career. I have more stories to tell. Let me know if anyone wants to hear more. Hello, listeners. Thank you for listening to this episode of True Paranormal Ghost Stories as you live the horror with me. If you would like to submit some of your own true paranormal experiences for me to narrate on this channel, check the description down below and send them over to my email. Do not forget to subscribe and click on the notification bell to keep up with future episodes. Thanks for listening. I am your host, Marie Lives the Horror.